So as you all know, my name is Michelle Ventner. I am a graduate from the Acupuncture Academy, which is in Leamington Spa. So I've been involved in this really, really exciting research project. We'll go into a little bit more detail about this, but it was, there's more people. Sorry, because I'm hosting it. There we go. So it's a really, really exciting thing for me to be doing, and it was to work with students with mental well-being, mental health issues. Keep admitting people for you, Alan. We're there. It's still coming in.
Great. Yeah, I mean, people will be coming in as we go, and if somebody misses the beginning, you can always access it later on the Let's Talk About Anxiety page on the BACT website.
So guys, just to let you know what I will be talking about. So first of all, I will do you an introduction, a little bit about me, a little bit about the research. I'll talk about students and mental health and why this is a really, 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 really important study, I think, especially probably now with the whole coronavirus. And I know that there's a lot of students out there now who feel hard done by, that they haven't got the grades that they wanted, or they haven't had the privilege of actually sitting the exams. I'll talk about the research study itself, what it actually entailed, and what it was what we did week to week. Then I'll talk about the preliminary data analysis. So just so you know, this research is still going on. It's had to be halted due to COVID, lovely COVID, halted it. So we have now picked it back up again. So the data that I'm going to give you today is only sort of like halfway through the study. However, it's incredibly exciting what already has come out of the research. If those of you that listen to me do the bar presentation, I actually have added more into this. So today I've got three really, really nice, beautiful case studies to share with you. And they're all three very different case studies. So hopefully you'll all get something out of that. And I'm more than happy if you want to take a screenshot of my treatment plans that I did with them, just do as you need to. And then very last, I want to talk about the future. So what the future is after this study and what we hope as a whole kind of body of acupuncturists we can get from this study. So we move on, a little bit of an introduction. So as I said, I trained at the Acupuncture Academy. I actually only graduated just over a year ago. So for those of you that might be new out there, I would really, really suggest that if you want to get involved in some research. For me, it's really helped me boost my confidence. It's helped me gain more experience quite quick, and I also learned how to work within a multi-bed setting. As well as being qualified at the Acupuncture Academy, I also work at Warwick School, and I'm a boarding house parent. So for me, students are something that I live and breathe every day. So I will say to you now, I'm in a boarding house right now. There are 13 boys above my head. The doorbell could go at any time. I have 2 kids as well. So hopefully it won't happen. Even a fire alarm could go off for all we know. But yeah, so I see the boys that we look after are overseas. They're all from China, Hong Kong. I see, and they're 13, 14, which is an incredibly young age to be living away from home. A lot of pressure of a private independent school. So for me, this research was really, really special for me to be part of. I know that we were dealing with sort of 18 plus, but I'm going to come into this in the research. I think we could probably all say a lot of this stems back to when children are almost in secondary school. I'm just going to let somebody in here. There we go. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah. So just talk about students and mental health. This was actually really recently from, I've got the reference at the bottom for you all. Support for students with mental health issues in higher education, England. This was from the House of Commons, the 2nd of March. There was a survey of students. It found that a much higher rate of mental ill health than actually disclosed to universities. I don't think that's a shock to anybody. 21.5% had a current mental health diagnosis, but 33.9% had experienced a serious psychological issue that they felt needed professional help. The proportion of students who disclosed mental health conditions to their university has rapidly increased in recent years. And this was one of the most recent graphs, and you'll see here there's a 5-fold increase in student mental health since 2010. And it would be really, really interesting to find out basically what's happened now, I think, especially 2020 and the year it's given us. So I think keep our eyes open and see what's happened this year. I think this research is actually going to be hopefully needed a little bit more. So none of this will be a surprise to anybody. Contributing factors to student mental health: work pressure, moving away from home. As I said, living in a boarding house and working with boys, for me, this is a big one. Obviously, this research was sort of like university age. Financial worries, personal pressure, pressure from family and peers, and institutional pressures. We all know now, I think we live in an era where pressures are coming from every sort of direction. The students have got pressure. They're putting pressure on themselves to get the grades to be the best they can be, but also all the institutes are being assessed all the time, and these poor students are being hit at every single angle to be the best they can. So effects of mental health, what does it affect? Academic failure, they drop out of education, poorer career prospects, and worst case, suicide. Regarding suicide, I found these really interesting facts. And again, I don't think it will shock anybody, but there has been a 79% increase in the number of suicides basically since 2015. So it's gone from 75 to 134. Then this is really quite shocking as well. Suicide is often linked to the presence of mental health conditions, although just 25% of people who died by suicide in the UK were in contact with mental health services prior to their death. So that means there's a whole whopping 75% of people who have never felt confident to get the help, or they've never actually been able to get the help. And again, with all the pressures that the NHS are on and things, you know, I don't think these students are able to access the help. I can definitely tell you with the 3 case studies that I'm going to talk about, one of them was really, really severe, and he was banging on every door and he just seemed to get the door slammed in his face. So, you know, I'm really grateful that he came to the treatments, because he did amazing out of them. And you do wonder what would have happened to him had, you know, that little door not been open for him. Then again, there's a 201%. So here in 2014 to 15, a record number of students who experienced mental health problems dropped out of university. So this is an increase of 201% compared to data from 2009 to 2010. So I think hopefully you all realise that there's an issue and it needs to be addressed. So we'll talk about the research study a little bit. I'm not the brains behind the research study. I just need to warn you all now. Julie Reynolds, who is basically, and Sue Harrington have been the forefront of this. They've done all the hard work at the back, kind of pushing through the ethics. If you've got any questions at the end about how they set up the research, the ethics and things, I have got Julie's email address for you to contact her if you want to at the end. But she sadly can't be here today because she's away. But yeah, so I'm not the brainchild of this. So I literally was one of the lovely acupuncturists that was delivering the treatments. So I can't take full credit for all of this. So the key aims of the research were to investigate the effectiveness of 5-element acupuncture as a treatment for students experiencing mental health issues. To explore the acceptability and feasibility of the service with a view to extending to established multi-bed clinic involving student practitioners. How was the clinic set up? So I was one of 4 TAA graduates trained in 5-element acupuncture and delivering the treatments. I need to give a little shout out to my 3 other fellow graduates who were with me. I was the youngest to come out of college, and I have to say there was Claire Watkins, Lucy Priest and Lucy Ward. All 3 of them were absolutely phenomenal, and what was really nice, we worked as a team. So, and they actually probably helped me along as well with it. So it wasn't just me. It was a multi-bed setting, and the actual research was to offer 50 students 8 treatments which had to be taken over a 12-week period. So obviously there's been a few that have hit the middle of COVID. They were like treatment 6. So I have picked them up since, but obviously they've had to be monitored in a slightly different way. Then recruitment was a variety of methods. So if anybody wants to know how we got in touch with these students, Julie had done a flyer, and that was distributed along sort of like the local colleges. What was really good was some of the local colleges actually put this on their home screen of their student login. And that's where some of the students actually found that we were offering these trials. So they would contact us, and then you'd have the wellbeing. Hi, Mark, you just popped in. So, yeah. And then the wellbeing centres in all of the actual colleges were quite good at almost referring their students onto us, or saying to the students, did they know about this? Lucy Ward actually went into Warwick University and she spoke to a lot of the medical students there, and we did get a lot of medical students that came through to be part of this trial, which was really, really exciting, because a lot of them were really shocked at how well this worked. So hopefully we've sort of tried to engage some of the younger generation of the next lot of doctors coming through to see that, you know, acupuncture is viable, it does work. Okay, so the actual research study itself, this is the criteria. So they had to be between age 18 and 30, had to be currently studying, and just so you know, they could be studying all sorts. We had PhD students, we had BTEC students, there was a young girl that came who was having to retake her GCSEs in the evening. Then, as I said, we had quite a lot of medical students and all sorts of backgrounds and eras coming through. So it wasn't just university, we had further education and then evening courses. They had to be struggling with some sort of mental health, and this could be self-diagnosed. And then the other criteria was that they hadn't started any medication or counselling in the 8 weeks prior to the start of the first treatment. So what happened at treatment? So treatment 1, they would come and do the full, complete consent form, and then their intake questionnaire. And just so you know, for the scoring for this research, they would complete health questions on the GAD-7 PHQ. So GAD-7 is your generalized anxiety disorder assessment. PHQ is your patient health questionnaire for depression, and then the WEM-WBS, Warwick Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale. So just so you know, I've got an idea here of the kind of questions that they got asked in treatment 1. It would be things like, over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by the following? And they had to answer like not at all, several days, more than half the days, or nearly every day. So it'd be things like feeling nervous, anxious or on edge, not being able to stop or control worrying too much about different things, trouble relaxing, being so restless that it's hard to sit still, okay, becoming easily annoyed or irritable, feeling afraid something awful is going to happen. So these were the kind of questions they were asked in treatment 1. And as you'll see, these same questions got asked again in treatment 8. And then again, I think later on after the study, Julie would email them. And then there's another one which was things like little interest or pleasure in doing things, feeling down, depressed, hopeless, trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, feeling tired. So all these kind of markers for obviously monitoring anxiety and depression. We'd also do then treatment 1, the MIMOP. So the MIMOP stands for Measure Yourself Medical Outcome Profile. So this was patient generated. I will talk about this a little bit more, especially in the case studies. You'll get to see what these patients actually picked. The idea is that the patient picks 2 symptoms that they feel are probably something they need to work on or they need help with, okay, or something that's really, really affecting them day to day. And then they'd maybe pick 2 activities that they found that their mental health was actually stopping them doing. You'll see a lot of it was like socializing, studying, sleeping, all these kinds of things. And then each week they would come and they would score themselves from a 1 to 6. So 6 would be as bad as can be, and down to 1, as good as can be. Or even 0, I think it went down to. We'd then do a full TD, so traditional diagnosis, and then we would do treatment 1 in their first treatment. Then from subsequent treatments, from 2 to 7, we'd revisit their MIMOP every week, and they would then basically score each week how they were feeling. Again, 6 down to 0. And then we could kind of see how they were doing from week to week. And again, I will give you individual scores on these and you can see them. And then you'll also see how we got on so far as a whole. And then in their very final treatment, we'd go back and do the full questionnaires. So the ones that I just read out now, which is the GAD-7, the PHQ, we'd go back and do everything all over again, including the MIMOP. And then after that, 1 week after their last treatment, Julie would chase them up with another questionnaire, and then 12 weeks, another questionnaire. So we can kind of follow on how they're doing post sort of treatment. We've got preliminary data. So just so you know, at this point, this was meant to be delivered at ARC. So at this point, we've done 212 treatments and it's been given to a total of 41 students. However, this at the moment is only based on 18 students that completed the full 8 treatments. There are more now. As I said, kind of COVID, COVID basically gave us a bit of a shock to the system and stopped us in our tracks. So preliminary data, here we go. So basically gender, I think you'll see here. So from those that have completed so far, 80.5% were female that came to us and 19.5% were male. Patient's year of study, so we see here, the biggest chunk was third year students. So 44% of these students that came to us were in their last year. 10% were fourth year students, 24% first, 22% were second year. Term time, place of residence, so 12% colleges or university, 41% were sharing with others in rental accommodation, 32% were still living in the family home, and 15% were living on their own. If we go on to previous experience of acupuncture, so only 24% had had acupuncture before, and 76% said no. Belief that acupuncture will help. Thankfully, nobody said no here, but you'll see it's a nice 50-50 split. So 54% said they're not sure, and 46% said yes. So this is what I wanted to bring you to now. When I said that, personally, I think quite a lot of these issues can start in secondary school. And as I said, I'm seeing it living and breathing in a school. If we look at this, 41% of these students have said they've been living with their main issue for 1 to 5 years, which means that most of them have probably been starting to have symptoms at the latter stages of their sort of secondary school kind of education. And 32% were over 5 years. Only one was in the last sort of 5 to 11 weeks, and 22% within the last year. Taking medication for the issue, no, 54%, and then there was 46%. Again, as we said, for the actual research to happen, they couldn't have started medication 8 weeks prior to the study. But as you'll see from the case studies, most of them had been on the medication long term, and actually they were still having these effects, and it wasn't really helping them. If we go on to symptoms, so as we said, the MIMOP, they selected 2 symptoms. And I don't think this will be any surprise to any of us here. These were the symptoms that came out from their MIMOP. So anxiety, physical symptoms, body ache, headaches, tension in the shoulders, tight jaw, tight chest, numbness, restlessness, nausea, teeth grinding, low mood, depression, fatigue, sleep problems, feeling of disconnection, disassociation, withdrawal, stress, eating problems, panic attacks, lack of concentration, irritability, suicidal thoughts, impulsivity. It's almost like reading off a checklist of the NHS symptoms for anxiety and depression, I think you'll all agree. Impacted activities, so these are the things that they chose for what they felt was most impacted. Again, socialising, studying, exercise, the motivation to do things like cooking, hobbies, housework, sleep, thinking more positively, driving, eating well, relaxation, and I think one person put romance. So this is the exciting bit. So changes in their MIMOP results. So this is overall now, this is from all the 18 participants. So as you'll see, the dark kind of browny orangey colour is very first treatment. And then this is the change when we get to treatment 8. Now remember, a change of 1 is clinically significant, okay, seen as clinically significant. So as you'll see, we add all of these participants together. Symptom 1, the average score was around about 4.5. By the time we got to treatment 8, it'd gone down to a 2. So already we've got over a 2-point change. Symptom 2 had gone down again, almost similar. Activity 1 was at a 5, and it'd gone down to again about 2.45 or something. And again, same with activity 2. So basically the trend going on there shows you there's a nice sort of change in the scores from week 1 to week 8. WB stands for wellbeing. So as well as the symptoms and the activities we asked them about their general wellbeing. How did they score themselves generally, just in their own wellbeing, their own well health? And then IL stands for impact on daily life. So it's how their mental health was impacting their daily life. And then for IS is how the mental health is impacting their studies. So again, you know, overall, this is really, really, really positive results. So the changes in anxiety and depression. So the anxiety, general anxiety disorder score is the darker colour, and then the PHQ is the lighter colour. So again, you'll see here, so we've gone from treatment 1, all participants put together, an average score of 12 for the GAD-7, and by treatment 8, they've gone down to 5.5. So they've gone basically from a moderately severe anxiety, and we've gone into only just actually moderate anxiety. So, you know, it's a nice drop in scores there. And the same with the PHQ, we've gone from an 11, which is moderate depression, down to a nice mild depression. So these are really, really promising results already. And then the the Warwick and Edinburgh scores, these do go the opposite way, so it's not gone the wrong way. Okay, so the lower the score, the lower their mental health, and then the higher the score, the more like healthy the mental health is. So again, it's all going in the right direction. So how did you feel overall since your first attending the treatment? So basically at the end of treatment 8, we asked them, you know, how do you feel now after you've experienced all these treatments? Luckily for us, a massive 61% said they felt much better. 22% felt better, 11% slightly better, and there's always one slightly worse. So there's our one that said slightly worse. I'm not actually sure what happened there, but with that patient. But I think, again, you know, 61% to say they feel much better is a really, really promising and really exciting result. So here's a fun bit. I'm going to take you through 3 case studies. And these were my patients, so I do know about these quite well. If we go patient A, I've tried to pick 3 that have got slightly different results and actually have all got slightly different outcomes a little bit. So patient A was female. She was 26 years old, and she was actually just studying the first year of her degree, and she was going into special educational needs. So these were the key things that came up in sort of like the traditional diagnosis talk. She felt her mood was unstable, so she extreme highs and extreme lows, and I think we can all see why here. 10 years prior to coming to see me, a boyfriend had committed suicide, and at that time she was the only point of contact, so she had to go and identify the body. And for the last 10 years, she'd been living with a lot of guilt, and she was still carrying this guilt on a day-to-day basis. And I think one of the treatments you'll actually see when she came to me, it was the anniversary of his death, and it did spike those results a little bit. She had an abusive upbringing. So dad was verbally and emotionally abusive to her, and she felt he used her as a weapon against her mum. She now no longer had any sort of relationship with her dad, and she said that her relationship with her mum was getting better now. Anxiety attacks, so she'd regularly have dry throats, palpitations, overthinking, and her mind starts running a million miles an hour. She said she felt like panic sets in and she just can't break the loop. Poor sleep, she was actually diagnosed with low arousal sleep threshold, so she could never really get into a deep sleep. She said she always felt like her sleep was fragmented. Just some days she felt like she hadn't slept for days on edge. She had a bad back from a car accident 3 years ago, and actually she was quite sensitive, being touched around her back and jumpy. She was taking, just so we all know, 40 milligram of citalopram, and she'd been on this for the last 4 years, and she was desperate to get off it and reduce, and she just found that it wasn't doing anything for her. So from a 5-element perspective, she was diagnosed as a water CF, so causative factor, and that's done from colour, sound, odour and emotion. So obviously if you want to ask questions about that, we can talk about it at the end a little bit. Her treatments, again, feel free if you want to take a photo of this, anybody. So treatment 1, I did ID. So for those of you that aren't probably 5-element trained, ID stands for internal dragons. And they're the points that we would do. So master point below REM 15, stomach 25 bilaterally, stomach 32 bilaterally, and stomach 41. I insert the needles from the top, then you go right leg, and then you do an anti-clockwise. So disperse to begin with. Quite a powerful treatment. Patients can sometimes start just sort of jittering, but it's almost like you see them calming and relaxing. I felt she needed these, especially with the trauma that she'd gone through 10 years prior with the boyfriend. Then finished off with a nice kidney 24 spirit point, and then I was adamant that she was a water CF from the beginning, so I finished off with those water source points. Treatment 2, so external dragons. So again, similar to the IDs, do 20, then bilateral, down the bladder channel, leave them in, wait for a nice pulse change, and then once again, I grounded her on those source points. Treatment 3, she then came and I did a nice AE drain down her back. So for those of you that aren't sure about an AE drain, it's again bilateral down the back, bladder 13, 14, 15, 18, 20 and 23. And leave the needles in, wait for some any sort of redness to come around if there is any, and then we just wait for it to fade off very gently. And as I said there, interestingly, the needles went red around the pericardium and the heart points. So they just stayed in until it all nicely drained off, and then kidney 25 and then source points. So treatment 4, you'll see I did a spleen 21. So I did do the Akabanis and she had 6 that were out of balance. So I decided to go for spleen 21 point, and actually it corrected after all. So just so you all know, spleen 21, great enveloping, it's harmony, all the meridians are united. That's why I picked that one. Then I did an entrance and exit block. So on her pulses, it was showing there's a block between small intestine and bladder. And then I finished off with accumulation source. We keep going down, treatment 6, Ren 4, Ren 14. So a bit of a kidney heart axis, trying to build that pillar of strength back, especially with all the emotional things that she'd gone through. And then support the fact that I was treating her fire. I went in for the fire points within the water channel. Then a nice bladder 43 on the back. So for treatment 7, so rich for the vitals. So a real nice point for kind of like a real fresh surge of like vital energy to sort of mind and body and spirit. Really, really nice point to do. And then it was a water Harari points, because actually it was right in the bang beginning before Christmas this was. So it was a nice time to get those water Hararis in. And then you can see treatment 8, I then decided to do her sort of back correspondence points. So again, yeah, feel free if you want to take a screenshot of those. Her individual scores, let's look at this. Oh, is it not clicking? So again, please remember 6 is bad and 0 is good. So her symptom 1 that she picked was to increase her mood. So to really help her sort of like feel more connected to her mood. So she started treatment 1 at a 5. Now you'll see all of these at treatment 3 peak, and there's a reason. We'll talk about that when we get to all of it. So sleep, again, sleep was one that kind of, it dropped, but it plateaued, but then she had got this low sleep arousal. But again, by treatment 8, she's still got that nice drop of 1 on those scores. Activity 1 was studying. And again, you can see it's a bit of a zigzag, we're going up and down, but by treatment 8, she'd had a nice little drop from 6 to 2. And treatment activity 2, she picked motivation, and we'll see there, again, it really sort of took a nice drop from 4 to 1 by the end of the treatment. On her well-being, so we'll see, again, if we look at treatment 3, it peaked, but we started at 4 and we got down to a 2. So she felt, you know, really much better in her own self. Mental health and how it was affecting her daily life. Again, this took a little bit of a upward turn at treatment 3. But by treatment 8, she was down to 1. Mental health and studies, and again, a really, really nice drop down here from 5 up to 6 in treatment 3, and all the way down to 1 by treatment 8. Now, if I put them all together in the next graph, here you go. Nice little zigzag of colours there. So treatment 2, this is some of the key things that I wanted to share with you. So after her first treatment, so when she came in, she'd slept 4 full nights. So remember that she'd also got this sleep arousia. She actually was just absolutely shocked, and she said she felt so much more vitalised. She'd actually slept, and she'd had 4 really, really good nights solid of sleeping. And she had a really, really stressful week, but she felt calm. It didn't seem to faze her. And now treatment 3, this is when all of those points completely spiked. She had the sudden news that a friend had died that week of a heart attack. So it was a real shock for her, and it brought back, I think, a lot of memories for her. So that kind of explains why treatment 3 had a massive spike in those scores, which is one thing that I need to say about, obviously, when we're dealing with mental health. Life throws things at us, and life throws all of us different curveballs. So we never know what's going to walk through the door. Okay, so, but what was really, really nice is, again, she just seemed to be able to deal with it a little bit more. Interesting that treatment 4, she commented how she'd had no period pains this month. And yet she's like, but you haven't been working on my period pains. So I just smiled nicely. Okay. Treatment 5, her sleep had gone bad, but again, she'd just been away to, I think she'd been to Vienna or somewhere on holiday. Had lack of sleep from flying and the time difference and all those sort of things. And also this was the week that was the anniversary of the friend that committed suicide 10 years ago. But Interestingly, she said that she felt able to deal with this, and normally it would probably put her into a bit of a whirlwind for a good week or two, and actually a day or so, and then she was able to pick herself back up. So it was really having sort of an effect on her from a day-to-day perspective. Treatment 7, she had to do a presentation at university, and normally these kind of things would completely, she'd walk away. She'd have to walk out the door and not do them. She'd be vomiting, she'd be sick and everything. And she actually said, I walked in the room, I did my presentation, I felt less anxious and I was not sick like I have been before. So she would have done prior to the treatments. I've just said she would have had to just not done the presentation. So she was really, really proud of herself. What I will say is I'm still seeing this patient now. She's come back to me after the COVID and she's still doing absolutely amazing. She's got a new job actually working within mental health as well with students with special education while she's still finishing her degree off. And she's doing absolutely fantastic. And she just now comes probably every sort of 5 weeks for a top-up. So these are the changes in her scoring from GAD-7 and PHQ. So as you'll see, treatment 1, moderately severe, and by treatment 8, she'd gone down to a lovely moderate anxiety. And then for PHQ, for depression, moderately severe depression, down to a mild depression by the end of treatment 8. It'd be probably quite interesting for me to do these with her now and see where she is now after, you know, this is now months later. So that is patient A. Now patient B was a very different character. Okay, the scores aren't as good with this guy, but for me, he's probably been, as a practitioner, one of the candidates for this study who's probably had most impact on me as a practitioner a little bit, but also his scores might not be phenomenal, but actually the way he's changed his life and his attitude to life has been absolutely amazing. And not just for him, but his whole family. So this guy, he was very young, male, 18 years old, studying art at a BTEC course, lives with mum and brother, father's estranged. Basically, his dad was violent when they were growing up, domestic abuse in the family. He was hit, his brother was hit. He watched his mum being beaten. He saw his dad a few years prior and he said it was once he saw his dad, his depression got worse and he had almost like a fear of becoming his father. When I first met him, he did not want to be in the room. He'd basically been, college had seen the advert for this and recommended that he came, and his mum almost dragged him through the door. He didn't want to be there. His eyes were down, his hair was over his head. He kind of grunted at me a lot, but now he's just completely, like I said, completely different. So the main thing he was getting was depression. He was feeling low all the time and he just could not pick himself up. I asked him, do you ever get high or do you ever get moments of feeling happy? And he said no. The big thing for us was he had suicidal thoughts and these were daily. And not just once a day, it was literally embedded into his head. And it was something that I know his mum just said she just felt so anxious about leaving him. Low mood. Could pick his mood up if he was working events, so he would do like events and things like that, but in his own words, it's a mask and an act. Anxiety, so triggered when he's feeling negative or things are against him. He said that he felt his adrenaline picked up and he started to feel sick and hot. Now this is the big one. He was a cannabis user, okay, and he turned to cannabis a few years prior to seeing me. Smoked every day an average of 5 bongs a night, which apparently is about 1 gram a day. He wanted to reduce, but he said that he felt it was the only thing that was helping him to get through every day was his reliance on it. And it became basically a crutch for him to lean on every day. But one thing that I found really interesting was that once he mentioned that he did smoke cannabis, and he was very honest about it, if he went to anybody medically, he just felt written off by them. Nobody wanted to help him, and it's almost like, well, you need to stop before you can have help. And he said, and the problem is, you know, he didn't know how to stop, and it was the only thing that he physically felt was able to do some sort of make him feel relaxed. Headaches, around 5 a day, intense and constant. I don't think that's any shock to us when we see how much cannabis he showed smoking there. Interestingly, he was taking 20 milligram of fluoxetine, had been on it the past 2 years, would like to have stopped. He felt it made his moods worse, had been to the doctors numerous times to get it changed, but again, because of the cannabis usage, they couldn't change him. They were saying that's the only thing he could have took. So again, we look at his treatments. Oh, sorry. I diagnosed him as a metal CF, again, from colour, sound, odour and emotion. You'll see from the treatments, if I click on it, he had very mixed colour, sound, odour and emotion treatment 1 and 2. So I didn't actually do any sort of source points. I wasn't sure. So I really just went for heart 7 to ground him on. So again, treatment 1, very much similar to patient A. I did IDs, and then I did EDs, and then there was the AE drain, and again there was the redness on the lung and pericardium. And then it was treatment 3 that he started to kind of come out of himself a little bit more, and then I could see that kind of metal CF in him. So I grounded him on large intestine 4 and lung 9. You'll see then I went for a nice treatment for Rent 8. So he really needed sort of like help on his spirit level, a real boost. Bladder 42 in treatment 5. Soul door, beautiful point, and especially with him being a metal CF, really kind of felt we needed that to kind of give him that boost. Again, there's a Ren 4, Ren 14, so that kidney heart axis, trying to correct it back up again. Accumulations, and then we went down to bladder 13, which was his lung correspondence. Again, that kind of, I felt that needed a boost, 1 for his CF, and then also because of the kind of cannabis usage and what's gone on in the lungs there as well a little bit. So again, please feel free to take a photo of that if you want to. I can come back to it later in discussion if you want to. So this guy, his scores, as I said, they're not phenomenal, but they do adjust. And again, they've got that 1 point score. So his low mood went down from a 5. We went on a bit of a roller coaster. Went up to a 6, but back down to a 4 by the time we kind of got to treatment 8. Suicidal thoughts, this was the big one for me. Was it a 4? It got worse again at treatment 4. I think at treatment 4, when we come to look at it, that's when college were basically insisting that he did maths and English. And he just didn't want to do maths and English anymore. And he just felt he wasn't able to. And he was getting himself into a negative kind of state about that. Just on the note of suicidal thoughts, again, I've seen this guy post-lockdown. He loved lockdown. He loved being locked in his room and, playing his games and things. But he turned up after lockdown, came and saw me, and I said to him, how have you been? Suicidal thoughts? He said, oh, I've not had one. So, there's magic in this. And for me, that was, the real kind of, okay, we've made a change here. Going to college. So yeah, by the end of treatment 8, you got a lot more positive about college. And then energy levels. So this was a big one for him because he wanted to get a bit more proactive and start to get out and about more. He was almost scared to socialize with his friends, and he wanted to get a job and all those sort of things. His general well-being. So again, that went down to 3. So these aren't massive changes, but as we said again, any change of 1 is seen as clinically significant. Mental health and daily life dropped down, and again, it went up a little bit by treatment 8 to a 4. And mental health and studies, so this is a nice drop of 3 down, okay. So here's kind of do a bit more of a sort of flat line and a little tiny dip at the end here. So treatment 2, after his first treatment, these are the key things he said. He found his nausea reduced. He could eat more. He was interacting more with everybody. So one of the things that he found that was really sort of hard was sometimes he just didn't want to eat, or he would binge eat and things like that. Treatment 3, here we go. He reduced his bongs to 2 a night. So it was 5. And that wasn't one of the things that he put down here, but it was really interesting how treatment was starting to have an effect on his actual smoking and how much he was reducing his cannabis. Treatment 5 was bad week, so this is when I said it all peaked again. College started to insist he did maths and English, adding the extra pressure. And he literally said, I don't want to go. I don't want to have to sit and do all my maths and English again. It was a real roller coaster for him. Treatment 6, cannabis reduced now only 3 nights a week, which was massive. Let's look at this. He was originally on every night of the week, 5 bongs a night. And what was really nice was that he now felt his mood was up now 60% and down 40%. So he was really starting to feel sort of the benefits, and he's feeling more chilled in himself. If we get to treatment 7, by this point, he'd hardly had any suicidal thoughts at all. And his mood was now picking up slowly. Again, his scores don't massively drop here. But we did go from a 21 to a 15, which was really good. And from 25 down to 22. So his depression was still kind of quite high. But this guy, as I said, the scores probably aren't as dramatic as some of the others, but he had such an impact on his life, but not just his life, his whole family's life. So I'll just put a few things up here that he said. opened up and has learned to communicate with his mum. This was a massive thing. When I first met him, you could see he was a closed book. His mum dragged him into the treatment room. But by sort of treatment 3, mum left him on his own. He came in on his own. And actually, he started to go home and talk to his mum about things. You know, it'd just be little things like, if you said to your mum that you're not feeling very happy about doing extra maths and English, like, no, I don't want to be a failure. It's like, well, talk. You know, you can work these things out together. And that's one thing his mum said, that they started to discuss how he's feeling. He was being honest about college, and he was being honest about his future and what he wanted to do. So it was really good that it kind of helped him to sort of grow as a person as well. He got a job at treatment 5, so he was feeling really positive about life, and he said he felt confident to be able to go out. He was working in a bar actually at night. He wanted to get out and live life again. I've recently seen him for a follow-up, and it was really nice when I said to him, if you could say anything to the younger generation or the younger you in years to come, if you could go back in time, what would it be? And he said it was to avoid recreational drugs. He said they just added to my depression and mental health. And it is the one thing that he said, you know, I wish I could go back and almost rewind time and not start smoking cannabis. So, you know, it might not have had massive effects on his scores, but from a life perspective, it was so big. And I still see him now. And as I said, he walks into the clinic now, he smiles, his hair's off his face, he's sitting there like having a little giggle. So he's really relaxed now, and he'll talk to people around him. So he's had a really, really, really nice treatment. I'm really proud of how his journey's gone. Okay, so that is patient B. I hope you're all okay there. Patient C, this is a different character again. So this was a female, 20 years old. She was in her 3rd year doing a degree in law, and what made me giggle was she didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. She'd done the course, she had realised that law was not for her, so she was finishing the course off, and she was now looking, when I first met her, to start to look at doing like a master's in management. So anxiety was the main thing that she came to me for, and she said she found it started at the end of her 2nd year of a degree and kicked in really at the start of her 3rd year. So I was just seeing her, I think I saw her from October, November onwards, so I was quite early on. She was getting panic attacks. She found they were triggered by stress, and they actually really started at the end of her 2nd year exams. And she would get palpitations, feel cold, sweaty hands, and she'd get really, really breathless. Her mood was low, and she found it fluctuates. Not enjoying the workload at university, lots of commitments to society, and she felt guilty if she considered reducing her commitments. So she was heavily involved in everything at university. And I did say to her, have you ever thought about stopping some? And she just said, I can't, I need to keep doing them. She had a lack of concentration in her 3rd year, so she felt she could no longer focus for any period of time. By the time she got to 7 p.m, she just had to stop doing anything at all. Worrying, so she found that she was worrying, but worrying about everything and over worrying. I diagnosed her as a fire CF again, so from colour, sound, odour, emotion. She was treated as fire. So, as you've seen, I wanted to share this one with you because I did a slightly different path on the treatments. And I think what I wanted to show this with you for is the power of the internal dragons at treatment 4, because I didn't do IDs in first treatment. I didn't feel that she needed internal dragons. She was present, she was connected, she was talking to me. You know, she didn't seem to have any sort of like underlying trauma that she was holding on to. She was really connecting with me eye to eye. So I went straight in for an aggressive energy drain. Again, a little bit of redness came up on pericardium and heart. Again, so treatment 1, I didn't feel, I really knew what her CF was at the time, so I went for a heart 7. So treatment 2, then I felt that she had a husband-wife block. So pulses on the right hand were a lot stronger than the left, so we treated that. Then I went in for a heart on treatment 3. So went for a fire, triple heater 4 and pericardium 7 after the junctions. So when she came to me in treatment 4, she'd just been back on holiday or home, and I'm not sure what happened, but she was a completely different person. She walked in, eyes were down, wasn't connecting with me. She was really, really overly anxious, and she didn't want to communicate like eye to eye. The eyes were glazed over. And I said to her, what's been going on? And she just said, I'm worrying about death all the time. And she'd been away. I think I put this in a moment. And she said, I was on the plane and I kept thinking, well, I could die now. And in the car journey, we could crash and I could die. And she said, I was almost put in the worst case scenario into everything. She said, I'm not sure what's happened, but I feel like I'm on a roller coaster of just spinning out of control. I then decided that I needed to do IDs. I wanted to share this because actually when you look at her MIMOP scores, treatment 4 is almost the peak. And after doing those IDs, those scores completely drop off. So again, because I'd done IDs, treatment 5, I then repeated the AE drain, and actually nothing came up this time. You'll see again there, I've gone for a lovely bladder 43. I like bladder 43, don't I? Okay. And then she had an entrance exit block of spleen and heart. Another block in treatment 7, liver 14, large intestine 14, lung 1. Interesting that actually treatment 7, it kind of makes sense. She just found out she didn't get her master's place, so there's a little bit of frustration there. And then treatment 8, sort of back correspondence points. So again, please feel free, take a photo. We can come back to it. So here's her scores. So remember again, treatment 4 was the point that I did the IDs. So her symptoms that she picked were anxiety for symptom 1. So again, you'll see there 5. It did peak up for treatment 2. But then there's that treatment 4 was at a 5. Did the IDs and then it literally filtered nicely down then up to treatment 8. Again here, so worrying, started at a 6. It did drop, but again, treatment 4, it went straight back after she'd been on that plane journey, and it nicely comes back down again. And again, with studying, it did drop actually, and then it went up. So that took a really sort of nice downward slope. Concentrating, that didn't go up in treatment 4, that stayed down. So let's have a look. Wellbeing, again, it really, this is kind of like the ideal scores you want, I think, for research. These nice little gradual, slowly drip downwards. So how she felt her mental health was affecting her daily life. Mental health and study, again. So again, you'll see there, look, treatment 4's got that very slight little peak up, okay, on all those numbers. So if we look at the graph overall, so interestingly, so I said that her anxiety got a little bit worse for treatment 2, and she felt, this is one of the reasons she felt, that after her first treatment, she felt relaxed, but she suddenly felt more presence of her mental health, and she went a little bit deeper into herself. So that was one of the things that she picked up on. Treatment 3, anxiety was much better, only small flare-ups, worrying way less, and then obviously treatment 4, went away to Holland, worried about everything, death came into every situation, and she came into the clinic, no eye contact made, and she was really disconnected, which is when I did the IDs. And then treatment 5, felt more in control again and connected to myself, which I think is a really nice thing, I think, to think of after doing internal dragons, the words, I'm connected to myself again. I think that's really important, that she actually said those words. Treatment 7, her anxiety is minimal and she wasn't worrying anymore. She had applied to do various masters, and that, I think the day before, she said, I just found out that I didn't get into one of my master's places. And she said, but it's okay, I feel fine. I don't have any worries about that. And she said, and I just, for some reason, she felt more optimistic about the future and something would come. Just as a follow-up from this, I haven't actually seen this patient since treatment 8. She's now moved off to do her masters. She did actually, after treatment 8, about 2 weeks later, I did get a text from her, and it was just literally saying that I wanted to say thank you very much, and I've got a master's place in London. So she did get offered one, and she just said, normally she'd have been really anxious, waiting for those sort of acceptance letters to come in, but she didn't. She just went with the flow of it. So it was really sort of nice to see how, even a few weeks after I'd seen her, that text message sort of said that the treatments were really holding for her. But as I said, she's moved away now, so I've not seen her since. Her scores, so changes in anxiety and depression. As you'll see, general anxiety disorder, she went from a 15 down to a 6, so it was a really lovely change. And for a depression, what's really nice is, as you'll see, there is no graph on the right because it was a 0. So she went from mild depression down to an absolute 0 in treatment 8. So really, really magical stuff. Really positive. Hopefully you'll all agree. I wanted to share some comments from participants. So these aren't necessarily these 3 and a mum, but these are different patients as well. But I think some of these comments are really, really useful for us. Overall, the treatment has stopped my tight chest, helped me sleep, helped me to stop needing to keep busy. Acupuncture has helped me immensely. So that was a 24-year-old female. feeling more present mentally and less self-conscious. 20-year-old female. I love this one. I felt the physical and mental changes acupuncture has created, and it doesn't end at the session. It carries through to your everyday life beyond the session. This makes me giggle now. It feels so spiritual in a non-hippie way. It treats my physical and mental self a revelation, 5 stars. I think that's really just kind of made me giggle, especially the non-hippie bit. Again, this one, this is actually my patient C, this one. I definitely underestimated the benefits of acupuncture. I think a study like this is a great idea to educate people with empirical evidence. Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. So this is the mum of my patient B. Thank you for not being judgmental, accepting his flaws and being open-minded when others have turned him away and not wanted to help. So this is obviously about his cannabis use. I've started to see him smile again. We now communicate and talk to each other. It's not just impacted him, but also our home life is now more stable. So that was the mum of the 18-year-old. I've experienced things that haven't been great over the years, but I can honestly say you have changed my life for the better. You've helped me to find me again. So that was a 25-year-old female. So I think we can all agree these are some really beautiful comments here from, you know, a different range of the participants. So the conclusion of the actual study so far, remember this is preliminary, but I will say, I'm carrying on with the research, we're now back into it, it's still following the same pattern. So the preliminary data for the first 18 students to complete the study found that a course of 8 5-element acupuncture treatments brought positive changes to validate outcome measures for anxiety and depression, as well as clinically significant improvements in the MIMOP scores, patient-chosen symptoms. 1 point per score change of MIMOP represents a clinically significant improvement. 96% of participants had at least this level of change in their main symptom, but the average score was 2.46. As a pragmatic intervention service, we do not have a control group to compare results with. However, the majority of participants had been suffering for several years, and nearly half were on medication yet still suffering. The initial data therefore suggests that a course of 5-element acupuncture does bring measurable benefits as an adjunct to usual care. We will explore issues of feasibility and accessibility of multi-bed setting at the end of the study, along with final results for all to come. So part of the future plan for what's going on now with this study, completing it. So the aim is now to focus on completing the study. This would have been done if it weren't for lovely COVID. So, but we're carrying on with it now, and we're picking back up again, trying to get a larger sample. A really, really exciting thing that's happened from this study is that myself and another practitioner now have just launched a regular wellbeing clinic for mental health at the Acupuncture Academy. So we've realised there's a real need for this. And within this clinic, we are now open to current Acupuncture Academy students to come and observe, get some basic clinical skills within the practice as well. So it's opening some really nice new little doors and avenues. Julie and Sue will have the lovely job of publishing the findings. So they'll be able to publish the final report once we get everything in. But I think as a community as a whole, hopefully this study will sort of like allow us as a community to approach local education institutes, look at sort of recommending acupuncture or ways of helping set up similar clinics nationwide. You know, we all live in different parts of the country, different parts, you know, we're all surrounded by schools, universities, colleges, you know, evening schools. You know, there's so much that we can tap into. And I think hopefully this study will really, really, really sort of like allow us as a community to sort of embrace that and to hopefully go forward with that. Just so you all know as well, because I live at the school here, I've actually approached the school here and I've got an acupuncture treatment room within the school now. At the moment it's not open because it's the last thing the school needs to be doing at the minute with risk assessments because of COVID, and also with the whole house of boys just come back, it's the last thing I need to be doing at the minute as well. So I'm just focusing on the wellbeing clinic at the moment. But you know, the aim is in the next few weeks to get that clinic open again. And at the moment, the school are allowing me to treat staff because I think, you know, what we need to remember here is underneath the whole body of these, students is a whole network above them of very stressed professors, teachers, lecturers, you know, also feeling the same pressure that these students are feeling. So it's not just students in this whole thing, you know, it's actually everybody really, but you know, there's also the chance that if we can tap into these institutes, we can also help the people that are helping them. So at the moment, I have got a clinic that is there for me to help treat like staff at the moment. But I mean, the aim is eventually for me to be able to open that sort of door up to students as well. As I said, though, the students here are a lot younger. It's secondary school, so it goes up to 18. So it has kind of got slightly different areas that we need to look into. So that is the research, that is the plan. Hopefully you've all enjoyed this. I'm going to share with you now my contact details. Here we go. Please feel free to email me or call me, text me. I'm more than happy to talk about this in detail. Anything though to do with the actual ethics and stuff, don't email me, email Julie. So as I said, Julie sadly can't be here, but yeah, contact Julie there at the Acupuncture Academy. She'll be more than happy to discuss how she set up this and how she got it all going. Probably Mark might be able to answer some of those questions today if there are any, I'm not sure, Mark. But that's it, guys. So hopefully it's kind of been, I don't know where these lines are coming from. Can you see them?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're not from me, but anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this, and hopefully it's kind of given you all a bit of a insight into what this has done. Is it question time now?
Brilliant. Well done for
Shall I
that.
stop sharing, Alan?
Sorry?
Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, if you want to. And if you hand back the hosting then to me, and
How
I'll
do
be
I
able
do
to
that?
unmute the individual people who choose to ask questions.
How do I hand back the...
That's a good question. So if you look for me in the participants box, or you can search me in the find a participant.
Yeah, okay, Alan, yeah. Alan Longcroft?
Yeah, that is me.
What do I do?
And then there should be more or something to that, something similar. And then make host.
There you go.
Terrific. Oh, I've got all the power now again. Wow.
Sorry.
So, brilliant. So well done. Thank you ever so much for that. And as many people be aware, that we haven't just had to cancel our conference this year because of the lovely COVID, but also the ARC symposium. So having the chance to have you share your research presentation has been able to bring this to our members. So thank you very much for doing so. We have had a couple of questions in the chat box as we go. So I'll start with one of these, and if people then want to use the raise your hand function, we'll go through each one and then we'll come back to chat box after, okay?
I need to apologise actually, because I've just seen that there's one that says, but I couldn't see the comments on my screen for some reason. So when it said make you, sorry.
Oh, no, don't you worry, don't you worry. No, Pep.
There's one that said, can you make you host? I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah, no, Pep. So we have a question from Shay. So did the guy who was using cannabis
Yes.
reduce smoking on his own, or was it from advice during your treatment?
So when he came to clinic, it wasn't really treatment 1, but treatment 2, he actually said, I want to reduce. And then it was obviously, then I said to him, it is advisable, you know, it would be better for you. So it was something that he already had he knew he needed to. Does that make sense? It was just along the way. It was one of those things that I said, well, you know, let's look at reducing gradually. And I just kind of helped him a little bit with, like, you know, ways to reduce. Because I spoke to somebody I know who used to be quite a avid cannabis user, and I said, look, what's the best way? And he was like, the worst thing he can do is come off it straight away. And so I was able to kind of, I mean, I've never smoked cannabis in my life, I wouldn't have a clue, but so I wasn't really, but I used people that I knew with that bit of advice and just said, look, just, you need to come off it gradually. And he did. And as I said, I saw him recently, and his use is very minimal now. He's still doing the odd 1 or 2. It'd be great if he was off it completely, but he's now, I mean, 5 a night, that's extreme, isn't it? So 5 bongs a night. So yeah. But, and also, just so you know, I don't know about this, but the person that I spoke to, they were saying as well, I don't know, you can get cannabis with nicotine in it, and non-nicotine cannabis, apparently. And he was saying to me, if you can get him to use the non-cannabis or nicotine-free cannabis, it's a lot easier to come off than the cannabis with nicotine or mixing nicotine. I don't know. It probably needs to be marked. There's a whole new research on this for you. So.
So just a reminder to people, if you go to the participants box, you'll be able to use the raise your hand function for to ask your questions. But I'll come to the next one in the chat box. And this question is from Vina. First of all, she says, thank you, Michelle, really clear and inspiring. Regarding the prevalence of suicide, especially in recent years, was there any correlation with non-student population considered? I.e., is student rate higher? Is the gender ratio also accounted for at this stage, both regarding existing suicide rate data and also regarding recruitment of research cohort?
Ooh, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't look into that. I just looked at student population just for this research. Again, you will probably find that's something that when Julie and Sue come to put the whole of the research together, they will probably look into those sort of things as well. But yeah, for this presentation, I just looked at the student rate and got the latest figures from the House of Commons on that. So yeah, I couldn't, it'd be worth looking into though. It's a good question. I think it's one that I can share with Julie and Sue and get them to look into, I think, for the final paper. But yeah, for this, I just looked at the student population rate. Sorry.
No, that's grand. I mean, when you're doing these research projects, you do sort of just
In a bubble.
close in on what you're looking at, don't you? Fab.
I could say something that's
Yeah, go ahead,
vaguely related to that, but it doesn't answer the question specifically about suicide. But I saw that there was an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association this last week that was talking about depression rates before and after the COVID pandemic, and it said that the depression rates had gone up 3 times, and that the factors that were most associated with being susceptible in this way and having an increase in rates were it's basically people who were particularly prone to it already. And so the 2 things they particularly said were poverty and stress. So I guess if you're saying that, and I think you were sort of making out the case that students are particularly under a lot of stress, then they will be prone to being in an even worse state at the moment.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point, isn't it? Grant, we've also had another interesting question on the similar avenue. Were those on medication able to reduce or come off their meds?
There was, yeah, quite a few. A couple have come off their meds now. I think patient A, she's reduced. So I think she was on 40 milligrams. She's down to 20 milligram now. A few of them were getting ready to come off their meds or wanted to, and then obviously COVID hit. So I think some of them have probably decided to stay on their meds for COVID. So it'll be interesting if I can get some of the ones back in now for the clinic to see what they're now feeling. But yeah, no, some of them were starting to come off. So it was really good. It was promising.
It's quite interesting with these sort of flexible MIMOT-based studies that there obviously are changes to the healthcare provision aside from acupuncture that they're getting. Yep. A lot of people do reduce, whether it's painkillers or antidepressants, and yet still there is improvement in their condition.
Yep.
It's just quite interesting, these flexible things. They don't necessarily reflect the specific effect of acupuncture because of these other factors around it.
It's like I said, the girl that had period pains, and she just went, I've not had period pains. But you see, we all know as acupuncturists that, well, we're treating them holistically. And it was even ones that said, you know what, my back's not been hurting, or I've not been getting the headaches that I normally get. And, you know, you just smile and you're like, but that's because I'm treating you as a whole person, let's not just focus on this. Especially with mental health, I think we are, you know, you're definitely, you know, it's not like we're going in for a sore shoulder or something. So we're really going to kind of get into body, mind and spirit. So it was good. That's a dog trying to get in. Sorry, you can hear them.
Grand. Fab. I mean, I have a question myself. When you say that this was based in a multi-bed clinic, was your attention split between several patients?
Yeah, so when we first started, obviously, because for practitioners, we'd have like a couple of us in the room at the same time. So the first few treatments were a bit like, ooh, you know, how's this going to work? And you'd sometimes have like 2 practitioners at different ends of the room. And it would be, you know, sometimes one patient's in and then the other patient comes in sort of like 40 minutes. We always did, though, just so you know, treatment 1 was always just the patient on their own. So we kind of get that trust. We got the time to do the TD, to talk to them, to really get into what's going on, and for them to kind of get to know us a little bit as well. Obviously now it's going to be interesting with new patients coming in and masks on and everything else. But yeah, I think Lucy's online somewhere. Lucy Inman, are you there? So Lucy's now with me in a multi-bed. She's now set up the multi-bed with me. And I think Lucy's going to take on some of the new students that are coming through as well. But yeah, but we always make sure treatment one is always on their own. And it's quite nice because, you know, I think when they've got another person in the room, they realise it's not just them. You know, you're not the only one that's dealing with this, and they can see that actually there's somebody else in the room, and that's also another. And it's been really nice to see some of the students actually talk to each other afterwards, and you know, some of them have spoke about their courses, or you know, I think was it the Warwick University? All the lecturers went into some sort of a strike last year, I think, didn't they? Am I right? Near the end of the year, beginning of the year. And they were talking and comparing, you know, if your lecturer's gone into some sort of strike. And I know patient C, who was doing the law, she had a whole week of no lectures because there was a strike going on, and they, you know, they could talk about that amongst themselves and realise it's not just my college that are doing this, and there are other things going on. So it's nice actually. So.
Interesting. There have been strikes at my local universities as well, and my patients have been affected by that as well. It seems quite widespread, and the impact that has on the patients is, God, it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll now come to people who raised hands. So the first one will be William, and this is the same person who asked you the question about reducing medication.
I think William's coming to observe me Friday.
Oh, brilliant. What a small world.
I think it's William.
Go ahead, William, if you'd like to ask a question.
Hey, Michelle. Hi. That was
Hi.
brilliant. Thank you. I'm just wondering, do certain COSEs element types, do they respond better to treatment or in different ways, would you say? Like if someone was a
No, I think they all do their own way. You know, it's just that they've got different ways of, you know, so one patient might be a little bit quieter, or, you know, you might treat the fire CF and suddenly you open up that whole avenue of their sort of like personality, and they start getting that giggly sort. So it's, yeah, they all kind of relate. The treatments actually go fine, but you'll just see their personality, I think, come out a little bit more. And it's especially, like I said to you, patient B, suddenly, he's just started beaming, and yet he's a metal CF, you know, so you can imagine being quite shy and internal, but he's not. But just not all metals are shy and internal either. But you know, they all do it in their own way. So each patient's individual. Just got to treat them as individuals. There's no sort of book that allows us to. It'd be great if there was. So, but yeah, no, they just all come out in their own way. And it's just nice to see them sort of emotionally engage with you as the treatments go on. So.
Fab. So does that answer your question, William?
Yes, brilliant, thanks.
Fabulous. Okay, so next one in the list is Debs. If I'll just allow, beg your pardon, just allow you to unmute if you'd like to ask your question, Debs. Oh, maybe I didn't do that right.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yes, hello there.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Firstly, that was fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. I've learned so much, and I'm really interested to learn all these different techniques that you're using as well. I'm about to start, as you know, in September. I remember when we met in, was it July, talking about what you were saying there with the effect.
Oh, you're frozen.
Of a group cohesion, of raising the energy levels, I guess, of the individual patients. I found that really interesting, and I was wondering if you feel that would have been potentially a different outcome had you have treated them separately in individual, you know, separate treatments. And going forward, do you think using that positive effect of the I guess almost a bit of a self-help group kind of situation where they all have similar issues to a certain extent, do you think that will help? Frozen, sorry. Do you think that you'll purposefully choose multi-bed in the future as opposed to sort of singular working in an individual treatment room, as it were, like you are planning to do at the boarding house, for example? I just wondered what your thoughts were.
Just so you know, so I was one of the practitioners that was able to do evenings. So actually, quite a lot of my evening patients were one-to-one.
Okay.
I kind of got a bit of a benefit of treating quite a few on a one-to-one and then some in the multi-bed. So there was very little difference, obviously, between, like you said, the sort of energetics and multi-bed, and they all had pretty much the same sort of outcome. the reason we're doing the multi-bed, I think, going forward, obviously with it being students, we want to offer them really affordable.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still going to have that opportunity there for them to do the one-to-one if they want to, but, you know, we need to just find ways, especially with students, you know, offer them the opportunity of actually still being able to come in. So affordable acupuncture at like £20 a session or something, rather than, you know, one-to-one session. Yeah. So that's the whole point of the multi-bed as well. But like I said as well, and also some of them want that kind of community feel, and some of them want that kind of, you know, safety in numbers sort of feeling as well. And they're all screened off. They've all got individual areas. You know, they don't have to be seen by anybody. So, yeah. Did that answer? Sorry, so you broke up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you,
sure. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I had a sneaking hope that somebody might ask that sort of question. Grand, thanks for that, Deb. So we'll now come to Jill. I'll just unmute you and then feel free to ask your question.
I'm Jill, thanks for the talk, it was really interesting. I want to ask a question more on the practicalities of how you do your first TD. How long does it take? There seem to be so many questionnaires. I was just wondering whether you split your TD up a little bit and doing some over a couple of treatments. Because how long does it take on the whole?
So obviously the first couple took longer. Obviously that, especially doing, I mean, just so you can see, like the first treatment would be this, you see it, this whole kind of questionnaire, you keep going, treatment 1, but actually this was a massive, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't see this as a chore for them to do, because whilst they're filling this in, I'm able to see what scores they're putting, and part of this was, they put here, what's your main complaint, reasons for having acupuncture, so already the questions are starting to get asked within the questionnaire. So while they're filling this in, I was constantly then asking them, and going through, obviously, you know, you've got your TD questions of mood, main symptom. So yeah, it probably took about a good 40, 45 minutes. But again, you know, once you get them on the bed, you know if you're going to need to do internal dragons or not. Once they're in, I'd then maybe go back and then ask them questions, things like period pains. Yeah, but it would be, it's like, it was just the same as any other sort of clinic really, where you would want to each week top up what you know, do you know what I mean, and how they're going, any of the questions you might have missed out. So
right, okay. So did you find that you often did the Akabanis another week?
Oh, I never. So I've got to be honest with you. First treatment, I didn't do Akabanis first treatment. I tended to not. So I would find that like treatment 2 or 3, then I'd start to do them once, especially if they needed major blocks like IDs, EDs, and AE drains. So yeah, it'd be like around about treatment 3 or 4 that I'd do those.
So I suppose I'm saying, so you managed to keep your treatments within 2 hours?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It was great, so interesting.
But what was nice, if you know you've got a new patient, just so you know, so give yourself that hour where you've got them one-to-one, but, you know, your next patient can be coming in whilst they're laying on the bed and they've got the needles in, you know, and you know what, if you've got a patient who's on treatment 4 or 5, then, you know, it's fab.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Brilliant. And so far we've had a lovely time together, and you've done a splendid job with your presentations, but you're now going to be interrogated by Mark. So good luck.
Mark, no research questions.
Yeah. No, it's just one research comment and then an entirely acupuncture question.
Okay, go on then.
Yeah, so the comment, I felt I should say that as a research manager and all that, I think this is a brilliant example of how practice and research can come together and both support one another, and it's very much for that sort of reason that the BACSI gave a grant to this project in the first place, and I think you've been you've done a brilliant job of doing the practice and the research and doing the presentation today. So thanks very much, Michelle.
You're welcome. Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of you logged on when I did the BARB, so it's the British Acupuncture Accreditation, and I did a thing about a recent graduate doing research. And all I want to say to anybody out there is, don't be scared. I don't know, Mark, if there's opportunities for graduates to get involved in research or anything, but you know, this for me, and I know Julie's not here, I'm not sure if Jen's logged off or not, this was a massive honour for me to be asked to do this. So if anybody is like a newly qualified acupuncturist, you know, don't be scared of the word research. I think, you know, Mark, you'll probably agree, it's important that we do it, isn't it? It's vital that we do it. And but if you are like keen on maybe doing some sort of research or being involved in research, you know, have a look out there and see, because I think I've gained so much out of this in the last sort of year being part of this, and I've kind of grown as a practitioner as well and learned how to, I mean, I was thrown into some very tricky situations like the boy with the cannabis and the mental health and the suicidal thoughts. And what was good for me was because I was part of the research, I had people like Julie and I had like the other acupuncturists to go to for advice or help. So if anybody is out there who's a recent graduate or even probably a long-standing acupuncturist and they want to open their eyes up to research, please just do it, okay? It'll embellish your life as well as their lives. And yeah, I feel really honoured. So I'm getting quite emotional. Sorry, let's stop now.
I never realised that you were a recent graduate, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm only a year. Sorry. Do you want to take your funding back? No, I was, just so you know, I was the like, not the youngest, but I was the newliest. So I'd only been graduated a year. So, and the other 4, I think, were slightly more ahead of me in the game. Right. So, but I did jump in 2 feet and go for it. So.
No, you certainly did. And I think being able to do a project like this in a clinic environment is really useful, because it, as you say, it does mean that you've got people around you to support you. It's more difficult doing it just yourself in your own practice.
And it's where maybe it's ways that other colleges can start to now look at opening doors. I don't know. Well, I'm probably starting a whole new avenue.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great example of being able to reach out to local other education institutions and seeing if you can set up a service. I should say that the BACC's been running a study specifically on anxiety for about a year or 2 now. So if anyone wanted to get into research in a fairly easy way and they have people coming to them suffering from anxiety, then that's a good way to do it, and you can find the details on the BACC website. So the specific acupuncture question I was going to ask was just that in the 3 examples you showed, they all had sort of a bunch of major blocks in the 5-element acupuncture terms, and I was just wondering whether that was the case for all of these students that you've seen.
Yep. I have to be honest, I think they all, I went through, before doing this presentation, I did go through some of the other files to have a look, and I think there's only 1 patient so far that hadn't had internal dragons done, but they all had blocks. A lot of them had come from some sort of trauma, abuse. I had, just so you know as well, I've had a woman that came to me, she's actually a F3 psychiatrist. So, you know, actually she's a registrar now, she's qualified as a registrar. So she works in the psychiatry, and she come to me, she was doing a master's degree, and I was petrified, I'm not going to lie, that I'd got this qualified mental health person in front of me coming to me for acupuncture for mental health. It was pretty scary. We still did IDs. I still did IDs on her, because the things that she's seen on a day-to-day, I can't explain, but some of the things that she was seeing day-to-day in the hospitals and the way she was being treated, and that's what I think we're all forgetting a little bit, is that, you know, it's the people that are sometimes helping that can also be getting a little bit, you know, she even did giggle and said, I'm a psychiatrist coming to mental health. But she even said herself, actually, we should all be coming for acupuncture. And I love the fact that she still comes. Just so you know, she finished ages ago, and she now comes to me every month. I think she'd come every week if she could. And she just said, I don't know how this works, but it works, she said. And she just, you know, and that's an actual psychiatrist that's saying this. And she just said, it's magic. I've got fingernails. I kept biting my fingernails. I now have fingernails. And how have I got fingernails? But yeah, even with her, I did IDs because she's seen so much trauma. And there's a lot of trauma going on. But I think there was only 1 patient that I didn't do the massive blocks on. But yeah, sadly, I think they all did. But yeah.
Thanks very much.
They needed the help, obviously, didn't they?
Quite. It would be quite nice to carry on this angle, because you've also had a lovely comment from Jen, who's had to sign off, it looks like, because of losing signal. But she does say, as someone who met patient B, I can say that I could have cried when he walked past my office door and grinned at me for the first time. So proud.
Yep.
there's more to it than just a bit of number crunching. But, you know,
It
the
is.
fact that we have
It's life changing. Like I said to you, his mum swears that she would have lost him to suicide. You know, his mum just says, I just, and she just says now, I mean, obviously, in one way, she was a little bit annoyed with me because she said, he's talking to me too much now. Now he's telling me too much. He's telling me everything that's wrong. And, you know, she was like, great. But in the other way, she said, but now we can work through things and life's getting better for us. And he was open and honest about, you know, all the things he experienced with his dad. And yeah, so I will be honest, though, he did drop out of college. Patient B, I forgot to say this, patient B did drop out of college, but for him, it was almost like walking away from college has allowed him to kind of just find himself a little bit, and he's now starting to work and earn money. Interesting that as soon as he started earning money, he's no longer buying the cannabis because it's own money that he has to spend on it. So that's very interesting. So, but yeah, he has dropped out of college at the moment, but he said he will never think of not going back again. It's just at the moment he doesn't think college is the right place for him with all the pressure. So there you go.
Grand. So aside from, I mean, we have lots of comments in the chat about you know, how inspiring this is to get into research, and some lovely compliments about how you delivered your talk. I thought you'd like to know that. But at the moment we just have one more question in the chat box, which is just a practicality. Have you gone back to the multi-bed post-COVID, or are you just one-to-one? Yeah, you're back to multi-bed.
Yeah, with Lucy, wherever she is she still there? So yeah, we're back.
Waving. Fab.
Yeah, we are back. Obviously masks stuck, excessive cleaning, but we're back in. So yeah, at the moment I think somebody asked me, have you moved to individual appointments? No, we're still doing the multi-bed, but I am now probably having patients, obviously the beds are a lot further apart than they would have been before, a lot more screens, and I'm probably having patients slightly further apart in time slots. That makes sense. So yeah, unless they're like, I get a few like sisters that will come together, so they'll come at the same time, but yeah.
Grand. And I'm curious, since COVID, when you've been back, have you found sort of a change in the theme in what your patients are telling you about their anxiety, or
so at the moment the only students that I've done since coming back is the ones that kind of got stopped at about treatment 5 or 6, and it was one of those discussions that we had with Julie, and we all said that we needed to sort of like, we had to finish them off. I mean, we couldn't just leave them hanging at treatment 5, so we brought them back in. But what they have done is a separate questionnaire, so they can kind of do like a post-COVID kind of checklist. I think they've redone the anxiety and depression questionnaires again, so we can see what the difference is. Actually, that'd be quite interesting itself, those few patients to see. They have come back and they've possibly been a little bit more sort of like obviously anxious. There's one of the girls I saw basically hadn't seen anybody for 4 months. She stayed in a hall of residence and she stayed there, hadn't seen a mum, hadn't seen anybody, a medical student again. But again, what was really nice is she would have extreme lows and she just said she felt able to deal with it and able to cope with it. But she did, obviously, she was desperate to come back. I think she's one of the ones that's texting me going, can I start now? Can I start now? But no, I mean, I think the ones that we've been seeing, you know, yeah, they've had a tough time. A few of them have found it harder. They've had to go and live back with their parents again. So they've kind of lost that little bit of independence, I'd say. But they've come back generally okay. Obviously got different sort of anxieties about different things and worries, but they're generally okay-ish. Somebody just put, I think somebody put a comment saying about that something about, I think he's found his true path. Can I just say I agree with patient B. I didn't mean he shouldn't have stopped college, but no, I think you're right. He's found where he wants to be in life. And again, you know, it's a shame because he's just a good artist. He was a phenomenal artist. That's why it was a shame that he stopped his course, but he'll find where he needs to be in life. And I believe that, so.
Brilliant. Fab. Well, if anybody does have any more dying questions just before we finish off, then do raise your hand. If I've missed, oh, we do have, yep. Would you like me to unmute you, Vina? There we go. Go ahead.
It's just more a comment, really, and it's in reference to, just to use the term you used about number crunching, as the ultimate data that we sort of end up with, you know, this thing about graphs and maths. And again, going back to patient B, and that your experience and his experience as well of the acupuncture wasn't reflected in the number data, you know, and well enough. And I think it's just that we're up against this, working holistically. We're at the other end, one end of the spectrum of how things acupuncture works, but we have to sort of end up with the other end of this, a really reductionist set of, like, you know, results, which, you know, like, and I think that's an ongoing problem. Have to live with it. Right.
Which is why I wanted to share him, actually. It's why I wanted to share him, because
but also, you know, it just triggered for me an experience way back, decades ago, where I had a friend who did market research in the commercial area, and she commented she had to do phone calls to get ratings about whatever it was, and she said she would have one phone call and somebody would say something like, "Oh yeah, I'll give it a 7. It was really good." And she'll ring up the next person, they say, "I'll give it a 7. It wasn't very good." You know? And she was like, "What's the point of this?" You know? And I think it's heavily, like, you know, impacts on our capacity to actually show that it works.
Yeah, I think Mark might have something to say on that. Mark,
it really feeds their capacity to say, well, you can't, you know, there's no evidence, because by that standard, it's like the evidence isn't good enough, you know. But I think on a positive note, there's just loads of stuff coming out in terms of research on acupuncture. So, and I think for ourselves as well, we kind of know when to ignore the research that kind of might not, you know, favor it. So anyway, that was just a comment.
but that's why I wanted to share him, just because, you know, obviously the numbers don't overly reflect, but actually he's, right. Like I said to you, he's probably the one that, for me, has probably had the biggest change. But it's also, I mean, one of those things, isn't it, with the mind map? It's their own thought. It's very much, it's led by them. Do you know what I mean? So a mind map's one of those, it's one of the, probably the negatives of mind map is that they're not sure with the score, you know. It's that kind of, you know, for me, I would have probably put him down at a 2, that his mood was amazing, and that he's, you know, but for him, he still felt like he was a 4. But yeah. Thank you.
Grand. And thank you for making that comment, Vina, because it is important. One, that it's a challenge that we have when we're looking at anything around mental health, in acupuncture, but in other fields as well, to fit it into a quantitative model that you come up with so many different challenges in that thing. So it's something to be aware of.
It's like I said as well with mental health, like, it's not like a shoulder pain that's, you know, they can walk across the street and somebody says something and it skyrockets them, you know, and it's life. And we all know ourselves, life can throw all sorts of things at you that can make your anxiety, stress, especially those that suffer with anxiety, stress, to really kind of peak. And, you know, so I think it's actually quite a tough one to sometimes work with, because you don't have a clue what's walking through the door each day, or what's happened in that person's life, or what could have triggered them. So I said, it's a bit like, you know, for shoulder pain, we've kind of got something to grade it on, that pain, and whereas, so.
Grand. So once again, any pressing questions, raise your hand, type something super quick into the chat box. Otherwise, we'll draw things to a close today, and we'll let people get back on with their Sunday afternoons. But I hope this has inspired people to be thinking. I mean, you've got Michelle's made these comments. Do get involved in research. If you have any attraction to this, get involved with research, and that's acupuncturist orders from Michelle. But I'd just like to echo that. That really is a fabulous area to be looking at. So you will be able to access this talk that Michelle's done if you want to watch it over and over again, along with the slideshow presentation that Michelle has delivered. These will be made available on the BIAXI website. And once again, I'm just putting a link into the chat box. That's the Let's Talk About Anxiety page. We do have quite a few students who are with us today who have made the comments that they've not been able to access the Let's Talk About Anxiety page. So if you aren't a current student member of the BACC, that's we have a current, this is only a sort of short-term issue. We will be having an admissions officer in place soon, and so you will be able to join up with the BACC. But in the meantime, don't feel, oh, I don't have access. We do want you to have access to this presentation. So don't hesitate. Get in touch with the office, and we will make sure that you can get access to the video and to the slideshow separately to the website if you are one of those who do not have access. On the slideshow presentation as well, on the very final page, you have the contact details for Michelle, as well as, was it Julianne? So if you do get any burning questions, either for Michelle or for any of us, then don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you.
Fab. Enjoy your Sunday. And once again, on behalf of the AXI, thank you ever so much, Michelle, for delivering this
Pleasure.
talk so wonderfully and for sharing these wonderful outcomes and the wonderful stories from your research. The numbers are sort of a bonus on top of it, if you like.
No, it's been magic for me. It's been really magic. So thank you. Thank you for my clap, Vina. Oh.
Grand.
Well done, Michelle.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Grand.
Bye.